This is actually our sixth FM discussion session for this year. And I'm really happy to welcome you in celebration of World Oceans Month this month. So I would like to remind everybody that this session is recorded. I would also like to remind everybody, kindly keep your questions to the end of the session in order for us just to have a little more order. For the sake of the presentation itself, it is going to be quite a heavy presentation, but a very lively one and a very interesting one. Our session will also be published on YouTube, and we've got a YouTube channel, and then we will make that detail available to you via email soonest. Now, our oceans are an absolute marvel. It is alive with color, with noise, with drama, with curious life forms and fascinating creatures. And that is just what we know about for today. Every day, scientists learn more about the wonders beneath the waves. From space, our planet Earth shines blue amidst the defined continents. This is because the oceans and the sea covers over 70% of Earth's surface and holds, can you believe, 97% of all of the water on Earth. The oceans are responsible for making conditions on Earth suitable for us to live on it. Our rainwater, our drinking water, our weather systems and climate are all ultimately provided and kept in balance by the oceans. We rely on them as a major source of food we eat, and they produce the majority of the oxygen that we breathe. For hundreds of years, we humans have thought that our oceans were so massive and the animals in them so infinite in numbers that our actions could not possibly harm them. But we now know that this is most definitely not the case. The threats that our actions pose are so significant and they can have far-reaching effects. Recent studies have made it even some more startling discoveries. For example, by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in our oceans by weight. Facts like this have helped us to make the public much more aware of the harm that our everyday materials can actually cause. But among all the bad news, there are some great success stories. With sensible management, we can undo some of the damage that has already been done. Some of the fish species which have almost disappeared due to overfishing have been successfully rebuilt, and the levels of certain poisonous chemicals have also fallen after global action was indeed taken. Now, this is where the value of our aquariums comes in. In celebration of World Oceans Day on June the 8th, Global FM thought it well to focus on the bespoke facilities management of the largest aquarium on the African continent, namely Ushaka Marine World, situated in Durban. We have approached the SAAMBR, that is the South African Association for Marine Biology Research, and they have agreed to present information on the park and specifically the facility management of the park to our learners. Now, on our panel today, there will be Heidi Kilian. She is the Education Manager of SAAMBR, Mr. Daryl Waugh, taking the responsibility for life support and technical maintenance of the park, and also Jason Haxton, taking the responsibility of marine life. So firstly, we would like to introduce you to a video that we have actually made of Ushaka and basically how the park is run specifically from the technical point of view. And then thereafter, Nomonde Mdlalose, it's one of our learners, will then explain how the water is again then taken from Ushaka via the canals back to the ocean. Now, Nomonde is then also from Tibble and DPWMA, that is the Durban Point Water Management Association. So first, let's have a look at the video presentation of Ushaka, and we hope that you will be enjoying this.
Welcome to Ushaka Marine World. Okay, this is our open ocean exhibit, and here you can see the clarity in the water that you can see right through. That's what the ozone does, gives us that clarity, and as I say, also killing any harmful bacteria in the water. Okay, this is what our fellows from ORI use, the Oceanographic Research Institute, where they put those things into the water and then they monitor fish, especially in the marine protected areas. These are the chilled water lines up here. These run at about 6 degrees from the chillers. And then obviously the fire line. This is the seawater supply to the smaller plant rooms in the aquarium. And then this is obviously just the potable water. You'll see the blue corona. What happens is we inject a high voltage in here, about 5,000 volts DC, and the oxygen, because we supply it with O2. We've got a 10-ton liquid oxygen plant. Now what happens is that breaks down some of the O2 molecules, and forms O. Now, because oxygen on its own is very unstable, so those O molecules form onto other O2 molecules and produce O3, which is your ozone. Then the half-life of ozone in seawater is about 20 minutes. So every 20 minutes it's breaking down the half. But obviously we inject ozone constantly. We also have these here in the plant room, so we have control here as well. We can go and have a look. There's our set points, there's our actual readings. We can switch on off here. So we've got localized control or automated. Okay, I'm just going to give you an overview of our system from it works start to finish, basically, where the water comes in, where the water goes out, and the process in between that. Here we can have a look at the end of the Ushaka Pier. We have our seawater abstraction, where we've got 64 well points which go down into the seabed. We basically use the sand as a pre-filter before bringing water into the aquarium. We bring in on average about 300 cubic meters of water per hour into the aquarium, and you can see here we only run one pump at a time. Water comes up both legs and then it comes through into the aquarium. We run the pump on a VSD, which is a variable speed drive. We control the speed of it based on the vibration and the cavitation on the pump, and also the suction pressure, in order to protect the equipment. But so there you can see we're measuring the pressure and the vibration as well on the different pumps. From there it comes into the aquarium. Let's go here to one of these. Here. There's an overview of one of our systems, where you can see there's the exhibit, and what happens is there's no pumping into the exhibits. All the pumping happens inside the plant rooms. So what happens is the exhibit will gravity feed into the plant room, into sump 1, where what we do then is we pump the water out of the sump 1 through a biofilter back into sump 1. At the same time, out of sump 2, we go through our protein skimmer. Another name for a protein skimmer is a foam fractionator. What happens is, I'll show you in the plant rooms now, is we inject ozone into the water. I'll get onto the ozone now. We inject ozone into the water. What happens is it causes the seawater to bubble, and it brings out very fine particles of dirt in the water, so that helps for water clarity. Now what ozone does, ozone is an oxidant. It gives you water clarity, which is very important for guest experience, and also it kills bacteria. So any harmful bacteria in the water gets killed as well. Obviously ozone in itself is very dangerous, because if we put too much ozone in, we'll kill things, including humans. So that all gets monitored carefully. I'll get into that now. So then the protein skimmer goes back into sump 2. Then we pump out of sump 2 through our sand filters, and then through into our stripping tower, which is in the plant room. That then gravity feeds back into the exhibit. So quite a simple process. Very important. The sand filters will differ in size depending on the size of the exhibit and how much water is in there. But you'll see over here we've got probes where we measure how much ozone is in the water. Now over here it gives us the actual values of what the probes are measuring, and then we've got set points as well, which is controlled automatically. So if it goes up and reaches a set point, it shuts the ozone off, and we do that so that we don't put too much ozone into the water. That is all monitored and controlled automatically. I'll show you, for example, let's go here on this one. There you can see the trends. We monitor it constantly. The amount of ozone, there you can see measurement there. There's the set points, and those valves will open and close automatically. So at the makeup water coming in, what happens is we put in a certain amount of makeup water, what we call makeup water, that's fresh water from the ocean, that we put into the exhibits. We're looking at about a 3% replacement per hour on each exhibit. So what happens is that gets mixed in with the water, at the same time on exhibits, we have overflows on the top. So that excess water, we're bringing in new water. That water now needs to overflow out, and that overflows into the canal at the back there. And that canal then overflows into the harbour. It works on a weir system and it goes into the harbour. Now what we call our wastewater putting out, it's actually cleaner because it's processed water. It's cleaner than the water in the harbour. So it's very, very clean water. It's gone through a whole process through the sand filters, protein skimmer. It's been treated properly. So that's how we ensure the livelihood of all our animals and that. But that's basically it on the overview, and then we can just walk into the plant room. See that sensor there? That's for measuring ozone. So if we do have any ozone leaks, those sensors pick it up and the alarm goes off. We have an audible alarm in the plant room, as well as we have alarms on the SCADA screen as well. These are the sumps. There you can see the makeup water I spoke about coming in. Then there's sump 1, sump 2, and that's basically it. And you can see they're quite deep, so this is gravity feeding back from the exhibit. Behind me here, there's the stripping towers I spoke about, where the water after the sand filters goes in there and then gravity feeds to the exhibit. Okay, so these are the protein skimmers, and you can see how the foam comes out the top there. Doesn't look too bad at the moment, which means that the water is very clean, but you can see a little bit of dirt particles inside the foam there. So the protein skimmers are doing their jobs. Yeah. So that's just the intake seawater, and then that gets spread out all the way through the plant rooms. Okay, this is one of the plant rooms. We have 4 large plant rooms and some smaller ones as well. But they're basically all the same, they just vary in size. Now there you can see all the pipe work. There's the sand filter pumps, protein skimmer pumps, biofilter pumps. These are the sumps that I was speaking about. We can go to the top now and have a look. There's the sand filters. Okay, as you saw on the SCADA overview, this is another overview that we've got here. There you can see the seawater abstraction. There's where the well points go down, and that's the same process. You see the protein skimmer, ozone generator. I don't know if you want to have a look at that side quickly. This is basically how the ozone generator works. The protein skimmer works, where you see water is pumped in through here, through a venturi, which creates a vacuum and pulls the ozone into the water. With the ozone going in there, it's like air, it gives you bubbling, and then it comes in and overflows out the top there. And then that just goes out to waste.
Okay, so you should now have a very good idea of what Ushaka looks like now. It's absolutely brilliant. So Heidi, thank you so much for doing the first presentation then per se in terms of an overview of the park. So it's over to you, Heidi. Thank you.
No, so it's muted.
You are muted, Heidi.
Thank you. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, thank you, Sanette. I'm hoping my presentation gives everyone an idea of how our park is actually run. And I think it was really nice that the students could see the video first, because it did actually give sort of hands-on viewing. Okay. Is the screen showing up yet? Have you got my screen yet?
You're sharing your
We've
team
got your-
screen.
Yeah.
Yes. We just don't see your presentation yet.
On my presentation, okay. Sorry, apologies, it's a little slow.
No problem. But we've got it now. Cool.
Okay. Okay, is it in full presenter mode now?
No, it's not as yet. But we can see your presentation, but it's not in presenter mode.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. Usually
Stress.
usually okay with this. Okay, well, while it's going, so what my presentation is going to look at is the companies responsible for running the park, because obviously the park is a sort of larger entity. So the video showed a lot of what happens inside the aquarium, and I'm going to talk about how the park is managed as a whole, and then obviously we'll go into a bit more detail on the SeaWorld side. Are you able to see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see it, but it's not full screen, but we can see it, Heidi. It's fine.
Okay. Should I just continue as is?
I think so, yeah, please.
Okay. Okay, so Ushaka Marine World is a tourist destination well known throughout South Africa with the theme of unlimited fun. And as I said, today we're going to have a look at the park management. Ushaka Marine World is actually made up of 4 different components. So we've got Ushaka SeaWorld, Ushaka Wet and Wild, Ushaka Village Walk, and Ushaka Beach. If we look at the aerial Google map of Ushaka, we can see that Ushaka SeaWorld is situated in the center of the complex. So the parking is on the peripheral here. The canals are over here, which Nomonde is going to be talking about. And this is the center of the park at Ushaka SeaWorld. Then we've got Wet and Wild off to the Durban side of the park. And then we've got the Village Walk, which is on the parking side of the park. And then obviously the beach as well. Now, the beach is managed by eThekwini Municipality, and the 2 other sections over here are managed by Durban Marine Theme Park, and we manage Ushaka SeaWorld. So there are 2 companies that operate to run the main facilities at Ushaka SeaWorld, and that is SAMBRA, as mentioned by Sunette in our introduction, that's South African Association for Marine and Biological Research. And then there's DMTP, which is Durban Marine Theme Park, which is a city-owned company. DMTP is responsible for the ticketing, Wet and Wild, island activities, retail village, park maintenance and safety, and sort of more recently introduced in the last few years was Ushaka Kids World. So ticketing, we only have the 1 ticketing entrance at the front of the park. There's about 30 staff in total that will work on those gates and cash offices. And that's obviously the main entry point for any guests that are coming into the park. Wet and Wild has about 32 staff, so they've got their own food outlets as well as lifesavers, and they operate that section of the park. Wet and Wild is open from a Tuesday to a Sunday normally, and closed on, Wednesday to a Sunday, and closed Mondays and Tuesdays, because obviously people want to go and have fun during the weekend. And then when it's peak season, it's open 7 days a week, and then the park needs to take on additional staffing in terms of casual staff to be able to operate 7 days a week. In December, that'll be almost over a 6-week period. And just the highlights there of the Wet and Wild. So obviously they've got their own pump system. It's a freshwater park, so that's all chlorinated. It runs slightly differently to what we do at Ushaka SeaWorld. They've got about 4 staff operating the island activities, which is animal engagements. And we do have some input into this area in terms of the conservation messages that we like them to share with the guests when they do the animal interactions. The retail village is managed by the marketing department at DMTP, and they obviously engage the guests, the shop owners into different projects that happen in the park and try and get them involved as much as possible. Also safety and maintenance. So there's about 58 permanent staff that work in the park as safety and maintenance officers. The external part of the park, or the perimeter security, is actually run by an external security company. And the reason for this is the sort of logic of safety. So if somebody becomes too familiar with how operations work, it obviously makes it more easy to sort of possibly do robberies and things like that. So they have changeover staff on the external perimeters. All of our access into the park is controlled. So we've got obviously boom gates that drive in access points. We've got magnetic lock access card gates for where the staff enter. So when you are taken on as a staff member at Ushaka Marine World, you have to go to control and get an access card, which will allow you to certain parts of the park, depending on what your job title is and where you are allowed to be. And then obviously Ushaka Kids World, they've got a number of staff, and that's the sort of play area. Okay, our company, we've got 3 divisions to our company. We've got the Oceanographic Research Institute, Ushaka SeaWorld, and Ushaka SeaWorld Education. We are a long-standing company. We've been around since the 1950s. Originally at the end of West Street, and when they decided to uplift the point area, we were invited to be part of Ushaka Marine World, and we effectively manage the aquarium side of things. So this is just a quick, is it gonna play? A quick intro video, basically we're calling it 30 seconds of Sambra. Okay, I'll leave that. Okay, so looking more specifically at Ushaka SeaWorld itself, our aquarium has been designed as a sunken ship or a shipwreck. So you can see that by the outside of the ship. So entering into the aquarium over here, and you go underground to walk around where all the exhibits are. We've got animal behaviorists who work on site, mainly to work with the mammals that we have. So that will be the seals and the dolphins. And that's obviously interacting with those animals. But I'm sure if you're interested, Jason can talk about some of the interaction and animal behavior that they do with some of the aquarium species. So like the turtles and the sharks. They've been working quite well with that. And then we've got show presenters who obviously engage with the public and present shows for the public. Aquarists, which are responsible for looking after the animals in the aquarium. This forms part of Jason's team, and he can answer questions relating to that. But they're also responsible for making sure the animals are fed for exhibit design and ensuring everything works and functions in the aquarium. We have our own full veterinary team, which looks after all the animals on site. We've got a range of equipment, medical equipment, and the animals are also trained to conduct certain medical procedures. So they do regular blood takes. The animals present themselves so that they can give those samples to ensure animal health and obviously get sort of standards across our animal population. We also have interpretation and communications within our park. So we have a communications department which works closely with our education department, and they're responsible for signage and conservation messages in the park. We have the marine education side, which I'm responsible for. We do programs off-site in disadvantaged communities, and we talk about this being our outreach. And then we also have staff who work inside the aquarium and engage with public who walk through the aquarium. So they run different stations inside the park, and they'll engage with all of our conservation messages. Okay, and then on to Daryl's specialty. He had gone into quite a bit of detail, so this is just recapping a lot of what was said in the video. But at the end of Moyo's Pier, which is over here on this side, we have 60 to 64 well points that are situated at the end of this beach. And the pipes obviously bring the water through into the aquarium. It is known as an open system because the wastewater is pumped into the canal, and Nomonde is going to be talking about that after me. We have 470 pumps and about 32 kilometers of underground piping to feed the 6 plant rooms that then service all the exhibits on site. And obviously we need technicians, so this is Daryl's department, who then have to maintain all of those pumps. So yeah, it can be quite a job to keep everything going, and anyone who lives anywhere near the salt air knows how quickly and easily things corrode. Okay, Daryl showed you in the video quite a lot of the pump rooms. So the water comes into the sumps, and then I think I've got the same diagrams he was talking about here. So the water's brought in from the well points, brought into the sumps. It's processed through both the biofilters and the protein skimmers, and then put onto exhibit, and sorry, also through sand filters, and then obviously back and then treated before it goes out. In terms of the protein skimmer, Daryl mentioned that we've got ozone on site, or we generate our own ozone, which then gets pumped into the water and creates that sort of bubbling effect, which then lifts all the particles out of the water. And this can actually be seen in nature as well. So this is taken down in the Eastern Cape, this photograph, and it was quite a windy day, and the wind was obviously churning up the water as it entered into the estuary here, and you could just see this huge amount of froth that was being generated. And by the end of the evening, it actually ended up right up here on top of the area where people were actually sitting. And then we've also got divers. They do have to have a commercial diving license to be able to operate in our aquarium. And the reason for this is because they're working under the water. So they're cleaning under the water, they're cleaning windows, they're siphoning the gravel to get any dirt particles out of the gravel and all of that kind of thing. Any maintenance that needs to happen under the water, those commercial divers are busy doing that. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for a very interesting presentation. Much appreciated. I'm sure our learners would, they've got lots and lots of questions, but first let's go over to Nomonde so that she can explain now, once the water has circulated through the park, then what happens to the water thereafter, also specifically from a facilities management point of view. So Nomonde, over to you.
Hello. Jeanette, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
I'm
I'm just going to switch my my camera on. I've got a laptop on, and I've got my cell phone on, just in case something goes wrong. So thank you, Fedi, for showing that presentation on the screen. Good day, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. It's a good thing that I'm part of this, Jeanette, so I really appreciate this this platform. So I work for Stable Facility Solutions, and we provide a service to Durban Point Waterfront Management Association. And today for National Oceans Month, I'm going to be discussing how we manage the canal after Ushaka's distributed the wastewater to the canal. So we've got two valves that direct water to the canal, to our canal, which acts as a conduit for the wastewater received at Ushaka. So this canal has a stretch of about 680 meters, and it consists of a 1.6 meter deep canal, and we also have a 2.5 meter deep canal on the other section of the canal, which is on Browns Road, and this overlooks the new promenade. The two valves that we talk about, we've got sensors that are installed in those valves, which indicate the flow that comes from Ushaka to the canal. This is important for us to measure the flow that comes from Ushaka so that we know that we are getting sufficient wastewater from Ushaka, because obviously the canal has a lot of species that are managed by SAMBRA, and we have to make sure that the canal is well kept. We look after the valves, which have a flow meter reading and sensors, and these sensors and the flow meters are verified, calibrated, and maintained once a year. But the flow meter readings are done twice a day. So that's a daily thing that we do. Sorry, Fedi, if you can just move the slide. The next one, Fedi. I'm not sure whether everyone can see that. That section is the gondola section. So we've got 5 different sections in the canal. We've got the gondola station, which consists of the entrance point. That's our inlet from the water that comes from Ushaka. The water is received in this section. That's where we've got the two valves, the sensors, and the meter display. This is where we've got the gondolas, we've got the pedals, we've got the pontoon boats that are stationed in this area because of the lot of activities that happen in the canal. We then have a second section, which is called the Shannon Canal, and the Shannon Canal is situated in between two buildings, and that section of the canal is closed off. So that area has one pump that we've installed, which is a normal submersible pump that is maintained bi-monthly. And that pump, what it does is it circulates the water in that area. So it circulates the water and it goes back to the flowing section of the canal. Then just before you reach the Shannon Canal, there's a section where it's secured and it has hammerhead sharks, which are also maintained by Ushaka. And that's that area. So thank you, Fedi. That's the enclosed area for where there are the hammerhead sharks. Then there is another section of the canal, which is the deep canal. That section is next to the amphitheater, and it's along 2 beautiful buildings, which are called Quays and the Quaysides. That's the third section. And then there's the long stretch that goes through to the Waugh section. As you know, and as Daryl mentioned, that the canal has a Waugh system which flows water back into the ocean. So the 3 maintenance sides of us managing the canal is we need to ensure that the water that's in the canal is clean and safe for the species that we look after, that Ushaka looks after. So we need to make sure that we do water quality testings along the canal bi-monthly, just to check that everything is intact and everything is okay in terms of the species that are living in the canal, and also the type of movement and action that happens in the canal. Then we also make sure that we clean and manage the Waugh outlet, where it normally has a lot of seaweed. So every now and then we get a contractor to come in, clean the Waugh, and jet the lines to ensure that the water is fed back to the sea. We also clean the canal in terms of having our own cleaners that scoop out any waste that they can see every single day. And on a weekly basis, we clean the canal using our rubber duck boat. Apart from everything else in terms of technical, we ensure that there is enough lighting in the area. We manage the activities that happen along the canal, and we also see to that there is no illegal fishing, no illegal feeding, because that's also done by Ushaka. Can you just quickly go to the last one, Fedi? And those are just photos of the different activities that happen along the canal. Yes, I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Nomonde. And by the way, Nomonde does such a great job at the water point. She's recently been promoted. Very nice promotion there. Congratulations on that too. So, guys, questions. Now you've got the opportunity to ask Heidi or Jason, Daryl, Nomonde, questions from your side. If you'd like to type it, it's possible. Otherwise, just raise your hand and we'll give you the opportunity to ask. Fire away. Anyone for a question?
Guys, remember to unmute your mic if you want to ask a question, because everybody's been muted.
Jason, is there something that you would like to add from your side in terms of your responsibility at the park?
Got to unmute, Jason.
Just unmute yourself, Jason.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, basically what I was saying is Daryl and Heidi have basically summed up everything from the SeaWorld side of it. I'm a senior aquarist here, so I deal with the fish, your sharks, your turtles. I work in the collection department, so my job is actually to collect everything you see here, as well as the food that the animals need to eat. So I deal extensively with fish, invertebrates, sharks, skates, your elasmobranchs, as well as turtles and things. I deal quite a bit with Nomonde in the canal section, purely because we have our hammerhead enclosure there. A few years ago, we made an arrangement where we could make a enclosure that was large enough to house our hammerheads. The water quality as well that's inside the canal is of such a great standard that it was ethical, and it was really good that we could house them there, and that's where our relationship built on from there. Yes, Nomonde has just explained what they do with tests and water quality there. Daryl's explained to you about the process of how our water is clean when it comes into the canal. The only other thing really that we have to worry about is sometimes the poaching that we get from outsiders, which is ongoing. And recently, obviously, with COVID, things have picked up there. So we're constantly monitoring that and trying to speak with them and get security on top of the guards to try and prevent that from happening. And then, also managing the health of the fish inside the canal. That's where we try and assist as much as we can there. But everybody's sort of summed it up pretty well. If there's anything particular or specific you need to know about the fish or species inside the canal, you can ask that. But the rest is pretty well described already.
Thank you so much, Jason. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. A couple of questions that came in from Elian. What does an emergency evacuation plan looks like at Ushaka? I don't know, perhaps Heidi may.
If I can just, if I'm able to share my screen again. Are you able to see the map of the park?
Yes.
Okay, so with our evacuation plan on site, depending on where you are in the park, there's different evacuation points. If you end up Wet and Wild or any of the stadiums, you move out to Addington School Field, which is over here. So basically, we've got a sound system throughout the park. Control will notify over the sound system and radio that everyone on site's in radio communication that we need to evacuate. And depending on where you are in the park, you go to different points. If you're in the center of the park, you go out to the village. The promenade over here. If you're in the village walk or the tunnel underneath where Jason and Daryl work, they have to come out here to parking B. Anyone and the top surface side here will go out to parking A. And as I said, anyone on this side of the park ends up going to Addington. And then obviously there's safety officers. We need to do a full count of people and report back to control. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Interesting from an FM point of view also. Another question that we got from Cindy Devaraj, with the amount of equipment you need to maintain, what does backup power supply, in other words, your generators, consist of? And what sort of contingency plans are in place in the event of a sudden electrical outage? I think, Daryl, that may be your field of worry.
He's in charge of that.
Yeah, no, we do have, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We do have backup generators, but it doesn't supply all of the equipment that we have on site. We obviously have tanks where it is essential to keep those particular life supports running, and we have backup power for that. The large exhibits in the aquarium, what we have is blowers that are fed by generator power. So we basically pumping into those exhibits to keep the water moving, as well as aerating the water so that the fish can survive under those conditions. Load shedding hasn't been an issue to us. It's happened so many times. We've learned to deal with it, and we just take it as part of our normal stride. We do have obviously extra generators for the retail section and that. And the main thing about the backup generators is not only to protect the animals, but also not to affect guest experience during load shedding.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Daryl. Kevin Naidu also wants to know, I don't know if you're going to be able to sit. It's better that you sit down. What's the annual maintenance cost in general?
I'd rather not answer that question.
No, I so understand that. So sorry about that, Kevin. That's going to be very, very confidential information there. Lawrence says, with COVID-19, how do you manage and control the number of visitors to ensure the compliance? I don't know, perhaps Heidi, perhaps?
Yeah, so obviously we follow regulations quite tightly, and DMTP makes those decisions as to which stage we're on. Currently with stage 4, we are closed because we fall under museums. So our park is closed for the next 2 weeks. But with visitors, so obviously we're limited with numbers indoors and outdoors. They will only sell so many tickets on entry, and to ensure that there's a limited number in the aquarium, and for shows as well. So what we had been doing for gatherings, obviously with the show numbers, because that's gathering people into one particular space, was selling SeaWorld combo or SeaWorld tickets with the dolphin show, and then they would go into the show stadium at a particular assigned time. So normally visitors could choose which shows they wanted to go to, and in this case it wasn't. They were assigned to a particular show, and when all the places filled up throughout the day, then SeaWorld only tickets were sold.
Okay, thank you. Fani Pretorius wants to know, we mentioned plastics and plastic contamination, specifically in the seawater from an intake point of view. To what extent do can you pick up plastics and so forth inside the water that's been fed into the park?
As you saw in the presentation and Heidi showed as well, our seawater intakes are below the sand bed. So they go down as far as 6 meters. So plastics and that, we've got no chance of bringing any of that into the plant. However, with the wind and what have you, obviously we do have plastics that will blow into the exhibits. But obviously we have staff members that monitor that constantly, and they will remove the plastics from the systems and what have you.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Hey, in terms of your each and every industry from an FM point of view normally have got specific compliance factors per the industry. Is there any specific compliance factor that one needs to calculate or that one needs to bear in mind within your specific industry?
We certainly do. So from chemical safety point of view, we've obviously got to follow those procedures, chemical safety, as the ozone and chlorine that's used in the dolphinarium. We obviously have with the scientists and the departments downstairs when they're doing sampling and that they've got alcohol-based substances and all of that. So there's quite a lot of different chemicals on site that are used. So we need to have that kind of compliance there. And with that, obviously not putting anything down the drain, disposing of things properly and so on. In terms of education, we've obviously got the compliance in terms of the Children's Act, that kind of thing, just general data compliance, POPI Act that's coming into effect tomorrow. Yeah, so there's a range. Obviously, the different departments will have different compliances that they need to follow. Jason might be able to add on, but I know the animal department has to follow department regulations in terms of housing collections. Are they threatened species? We need to have permits and so on.
Thank you, Heidi. Two additional questions that's quite a bit related to one another. Lekotla wants to know, in regards with your emergency plan, does Ushaka make itself ready should there be a tsunami? That may be the first part. And then also Fani wants to know, in the scenario of an emergency, what would the typical time frame be? How quick can you actually evacuate the park, more or less?
So we do. Oh, do you want to go? Do you want to go? Can I just do the evacuation?
Speak after you.
From the evacuation point of view, we do regular drills to obviously get staff used to it. So every sort of 6 months or so, we do evacuation drills, and we can usually evacuate the whole park within about 13 minutes. So yeah, depending on the situation, that could be fast or slow, but I think considering the size of the park, that's actually pretty good. And we've got underground tunnels and various different access points. So if something is blocked off for some reason, there are other routes we can channel people through. But I'll let Daryl answer the question about the tsunami, because we are actually below sea level, which is terrifying.
Okay, rule number 1, run. But no, we will have early warnings when it comes to tsunamis and what have you. Because eThekwini monitor all of that. There's various instruments that they have out at sea. But basically, we do have emergency procedures to follow that have been carefully thought out. I'm not going to go into detail of them, but it means our directors and CEO, and also along with eThekwini, with the disaster management, there are protocols in place to handle things like that.
Okay, no, thank you so much. It's interesting. Fani is also complimenting you on all of your procedures and all of your evacuation policies and procedures that's currently in place. I think we've covered quite a number, just about all of the questions that came up here on my side in the question box. There's about 4 minutes left. Cindy, there's a hand up. Would you like to ask something, Cindy?
Hi there, yes. I just wanted to ask a question. This is something that I've always wondered about, and I've visited Ushaka quite a few times already. So in the case of a sick animal being identified in one of the larger exhibits, how do you go about isolating that animal in order to treat it or to prevent cross-contamination? And also, how do you go about cleaning the tanks, for instance?
Okay, I'll jump in there. So basically we have ACRIS, what we call floor ACRIS, as well as quarantine or animal welfare ACRIS, that every morning, every afternoon, go and observe every single exhibit and the fish. When you do this constantly every single day, you pick up a sick animal very fast. You learn behavior with fish like you learn with your own animals at home. And basically, if there is a sick fish, we will then, my team will get together. We've got transport trailers, which we then take into the park. Depending on the size of the animal, depending on the size of the team that's needed, we'll then go in. Generally, what we like to do with the larger animals is dart the animal. So just like you would dart a rhino or dart a buffalo in a game reserve, to basically reduce stress, to make it sleepy, a lot more easier to handle. We'll then capture, take that animal, put it into a transport trailer, and bring it down to our quarantine/hospital that we have downstairs. Once it gets downstairs, we have our vets, like Heidi mentioned earlier, which will come down and they will assess the animal and then decide on what medication that animal's to receive. So that's the short of it. It normally stays on site quarantine for roughly about 6 weeks, where it goes through treatments and welfare certificates. It gets weekly updates from our vet to say it's looking good, it's much better, it can go back to exhibit, etc. And yes, once that's done, then we'll send animal back to exhibit.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks for your question. That is quite interesting. We've got one last question. We just about 1 minute left for this afternoon. The guys from Ushaka, I know you're quite busy, but us in the FM is also very busy. So we've allocated an hour for our learners, and they always join in. Yeah, we've got one last question before we say our thank yous and our goodbyes. The last question again comes from Fonny. He wants to know, do you give your fish names like Moby or Jaws or something like that? I don't know.
No, so some of our larger animals, yes, they actually are named. They might be named because of their shape or size or indents in their fin. And the only reason why we do it for larger animals is specifically our sharks and say dolphins and seals. And we have a program which we use here, which is called ZIMS. It's a type of program where you log the animal into a sort of intranet where it gets monitored, where all its health certs come up. So you get a long history of that specific animal. Unfortunately, when you got a lot of small fish, like our tropical fish, our butterflies and that, there's hundreds, maybe sometimes thousands of a particular species, like our Cape Moonies. They are identical. There's no ways you'll be able to tell the difference between them. So that species will then get accessioned into that internet as a group, not as an individual. But yes, some of our animals do have names. They do.
And if I can just add from a education conservation perspective, it's also nice for our staff working in the aquarium to engage with guests, sort of talking about the particular animal's name and their story. So we've got 2 really large brindle bass in the large shark exhibit called Stanley and Dion, and they have a whole history about how they ended up in the aquarium and how large they are. So it's useful to have names for them.
That's good. We've met Stanley and Dion, by the way. So thank you, everybody. This was really a very nice session. We also get some nice thank yous on our chat box. It's always lovely to host these sessions in these very dark and troubling COVID-19 times. The virus must please now take a hike so that we can continue with our work. But thank you so much, guys, for joining us this afternoon. Also, lastly, A thank you to Anne Kuntz, who's the Media Liaison Officer, also from Ushaka, also for hosting us and arranging all of the interviews and allowing us on site. So from Global side, thank you so much, Ushaka, and the team. Thank you so much for Nomonde, specifically facilitating quite a number of these interviews and making the arrangements. Guys, I'm hoping that you've enjoyed this session. It will be available on our YouTube channel. So this is a new one again for us. We'll share that information also with you. Have a lovely afternoon. Stay safe. Next month, Madiba month, okay? So then watch this space. We'll send you some invites again. Have a lovely afternoon. Stay safe and stay sound. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.